So we are still in Ezra. We're in Ezra chapter 2, really. Our wonderful timeline. We are right here. When I did this timeline, we were back here. Good job, you guys. That's progress made. Every time you open up your book and read it a little bit, you have ingested some more of God's Word and your faith is built up. In Ezra 1, we have Cyrus's decree, we have Israel's response, we have the temple furnishings provided, and then they go back. Ezra chapter 2, the number of those who returned, that's where we are right now. Ezra chapter 2. We're not going to read the whole chapter, if you don't mind. Verse 1, these are the people of the province who came up out of the exiles whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, carried away to Babylon and returned to Jerusalem and Judah, each to his city. And then there are the leaders. And then there are the number of the men of the people. That's verse 2. And then in verse 36, we have the priests. And then in verse 40, we have the Levites. And then in 43, the temple servants. And 55, the sons of Solomon's servants. And 58, all the temple servants. Verse 59, these who came up from this place and that place. Verse 64, the whole assembly numbered 42,360, besides their male and female servants, and so on and so forth. Verse 70, now the priests and the Levites, some of the people, the singers, the gatekeepers, and the temple servants lived in their cities, and all Israel in their cities. Okay, this is big. God said to Israel back when they came out of Egypt, look, I'm going to bring you into this land. I'm going to give you this land. You're going to settle in this land. And then we read the accounts of Joshua. And then guess what? At the end of Joshua, where are they? They're in the land. They even have their 6 designated refugee cities, which means, hey, they're really in the land. God said you'll be in the land, and they're in the land. For 70 years, God has been saying, I'm going to bring you back to the land. I'm going to bring you back to the land. We read it here. Here they are back in the land. Now this is pretty big. They're resettled. They're back. What a blessing it is to be back in the land. If you're a Jew, you have arrived. Now what do they do?
Rebuild their life.
That was a good answer. Rebuild their life. I thought you were going to say the temple. I was going to say, yeah, that's the obvious one. Right? They rebuild their temple. But while they're waiting until they rebuild the temple, guess what they got to do? Live their life, right? They got to get eggs. They've got to do a little work here and do a little work there. They've got to raise their children. They've got to interact with people who sometimes bother them, and they sometimes bother other people. And the whole time, they have to live what? Faithfully. That's what they have to do. Now, they're about to have this giant task in front of them. It's going to be a huge one. Build that temple. It's going to take years. But between now and then, and even while they're doing that, they just have to live their lives full of faith. If you turn to Romans chapter 2, verse 25. Romans 2:25. Indeed, circumcision is of value if you practice the law. The idea is, look, yeah, you can call yourself a Jew, but you got to live this law here. You could say the same thing about living in the land. Yes, indeed, living in the inheritance is of value, but only if you practice the law. But if you are a transgressor of the law, it doesn't matter where you live. Even if you're a Jew, it doesn't matter where you live. No, you've got to keep this law. So you're back in the land now. You've got to keep the law. Verse 28. He is not a Jew who is one outwardly, nor is circumcision that which is outward in the flesh, but he is a Jew who is one inwardly. And circumcision is that which is of the heart, by the Spirit, not by the letter. And his praise is not from men, but from God. So, not only while you're back in the land, good job, you made it back to the land, great. But now you've got to keep this law. And not only do you have to keep this law, but you've got to keep it with the right heart. Which is not exactly, none of this is easy. You remember in, John 11, I forget exactly where it is, There's the man who's born blind. He's healed. His parents, did they keep the law? You know they did because of where they were. Where were they members of the synagogue? They kept the law. But were they pleasing to God? No, because when it came time to confess him, essentially, what were they scared of? Being put out. Notice this says in verse 29 that his praise is not from men, which is exactly the opposite of what these parents, who obviously were good enough to stay in the synagogue, which is ruled over by the Sadducees and the Pharisees, right? Okay, so they're all right. How about the Pharisee in Matthew or Luke 18, I think it is? The Pharisee, he's praying. Has he kept the law? Essentially. Actually, no. Not essentially, right? He checked here, he checked there. But what did he mess up on? Humility, right? I'm not like him. The weightier matters of the law. Justice, love, faithfulness. How about the rich young ruler? Oh, he kept the law. He's doing, but he's back in the land. He's keeping that law. He's doing all right. So you got to keep the law. Yes, you got to keep the law, but that's not it. You got to live faithfully, which means that this law should drive your heart. What wouldn't the rich young ruler do?
Give it all up.
Give it up. He's missing something. It's either he has covetousness or greed or something like that, or he's missing love. Give it up and give it, whatever it is. So he kept the whole law. The Jews themselves, as a group, chapter 3, verse 1, what advantage has the Jew? Chapter 3, verse 3, what then? If some did not believe, their unbelief will not nullify the faithfulness of God, will it? And in chapter 9, it says that the Jews, Israel, pursued a law, but they didn't arrive at righteousness. Why? Because they did not pursue it by faith, but as though by works. So they're back in the land. They've got to keep the law, and they've got to keep the law and the point of the law, which is to develop love in the heart. Now I say this, they have to keep the law, they have to live monthly, weekly, daily, and minute. Minute. What do I mean by that? I've had what? Big mistake. Done little. That's all he had. The timeline chapter 11 where he makes a mistake, but earlier in the chapter, back here, he had just said this best, and of course we would say who is that person? Go and tell her to base something. The point is this. This is where we've got to keep our mind. And it's these little that will have huge impact later on. I've said this before. It's almost like a parable. To cross the river. Just as she ought to be. Who's got to get across? The older priest doesn't. They go on walking for hours. The whole time, the younger priest, you could tell something. Finally, he says, "Did you not see the witch?" And the old priest said, "Yes, I did. But I back in the river." All the time, this young man little decision, maybe that decision the entire time it wasn't, okay? Living faithfully is done moment to moment. It's the little. Yeah. illustration. The goal is not to lose faith. Is your faith? Get a job. How do I know this? Because God says if you want to keep your faith, assemble.
And you can know that without. In other words,
right.
See it
just because you
see that.
Yeah.
However, you don't do that because
Right.
you don't
But
it's not necessary.
Right.
The anecdotal evidence is the
evidence of right. So in this case, the paper, go on the internet, whatever you got. You go there, big or small. It's small, but that's what it takes. No. Oh, I see. There it is. That's a tiny little decision, but that will have huge impact on you if you do it. And it's 1,000 of those every minute, every right. I said this is one. The goal is not to lose faith. I'm giving you one example of one small decision you make that will help you maintain faith. In this example, I said the goal is not to lose faith. One God-given preventative of not losing faith is habitually assembling. So is reading your Bible. Maybe not all of us are right now. It's the end of the day. Y'all work for a living. I understand this. I got it easy because I got it easy. Compared to you in this category, you get done, get home late at night, and you want to do this. Is that going to build your faith? No, that's not. So it's you make this little decision. No, I'm going to pick up. First thing, I either go to Real Clear Politics or I open the Proverbs. You think, well, it's easy, but you guys know, you've been there. You know how it is. No, I don't want to have to think, because every time you open Proverbs, you actually got to think, right? What promotes faith? Yeah, prayer to the one who gives you faith promotes faith, right? So you're back in the land, they're back in the land. How are they? What are they? We're going to build this big temple. Yes, but between now and building the big temple, how about praying 3 times a day? That little decision. No, I'm going to put down the phone and I'm going to say a prayer that's 3 sentences long. Good. Amen. 1,000 little decisions. When you raise your child, you're raising your child, and you allow that little deviant behavior to go without word every time. Is it little anymore? Not anymore. When you should have said, no, we need to deal with it. We need to deal with this. We need to deal with that, right? It's a little tiny thing. They snowball if you don't handle them correctly. I've seen this time and again in my life and in other people's lives. Questions or comments on what we've talked about here?
It's not just action, it's attitudes too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, can I not respond to a petty statement made about me personally?
Oh my.
For example, what is my reaction when you mean to things that I don't like? There's no physical response to that, either available or that you would dare touch this time. Sometimes it's entirely internal.
Right.
This is something I need to let go.
Right.
Can I do that? Can I stop worrying?
Love believes all things. Love hopes all things. Love does not.
Can I assume the best of this person?
Right.
Based upon what they've done.
And even if I'm right, love doesn't reply the way they mistreated me. Right? Yeah. I mean, this is huge. In fact, I may have mentioned this before, but It took me many years to understand that being angry with somebody unrighteously is itself wrong. Wrong. And I tell you, I spent years in my mind playing through scenarios in my mind of hypothetical discussions based on what somebody said. And I would get angry with them, and in my mind, I'd go off. And the entire time I was in sin. I'm not saying all through the years, but the entire time I'm playing out this conversation. It would last 45 minutes in my head. You're driving from here to Albany. What do you got to think about? That one conversation. All the way. So you're right about this. So much of it is in our mind. And that's living faithful, right? It's easy to get on your hand. John's building a house right now. That's easy. For John not to get angry while he's building his house, that's tough. That's tough for any of us, right? You got to build the temple, right? Okay, so that's going to be easy. Get there and build a temple. I know they're going to deal with obstacles. That's the issue, right? The obstacles. Okay. So, back here in Ezra chapter 1 or 2, Ezra chapter 2, I did skip over one part that I wanted to read. Verse 58 says, all the temple servants and the sons of Solomon's servants were 392. Now these are those who came up from Tel Malah, Tel Harsha, Jerem, Adam, and Immer. But they were not able to give evidence of their fathers' households and their descendants, whether they were of Israel. And then again in 60, of the sons of the priests of Habiah and Hakaz, and the sons of Barzillai, who took a wife from the daughters of Barzillai the Gileadite, and he was called by their name. These searched among their ancestral registration, but they could not be located. Therefore, they were considered unclean and excluded from the priesthood. They couldn't prove that they were, and so they were considered unclean. What? You hurt my feelings. And excluded. Wow. The governor said to them that they should not eat from the most holy things until the priest stood up with the Urim. So they're going to let God take care of that. Can you see any relevance to any discussion we might have today about can you prove, or let's have a discussion. Let's have a discussion. The outcome of which may be that we think somebody is unclean and to be excluded. Can you see any relevance to any discussion we would have today? Yes, right? Is there a record in the New Testament of their conversion experience? Anybody have a discussion of somebody's conversion experience? Acts 19. Tell me about your conversion experience. That's Lee's uninspired paraphrase. What happened in Acts chapter 19? Tell me about. We need to talk. Hey, we need to talk. Paul assumed some things and then realized, whoa! We have people come in here that we might assume some things, but we have to, because we assume it can be wrong, what do we have to do? Have a discussion. Hey, no, we might actually not say, you're unclean and to be excluded. But we might say something that gets the same point across, right?
Also the concept of whether a person or a thing or an idea or a practice, the maybe just isn't there. I mean, for all we know,
the what isn't?
The maybe. They consulted the Uman and Tumim or whatever it is. Eventually, what do you know? They're perfectly clean.
Right.
But until they knew.
Yeah. One who asserts must prove. That's what this, when the preacher says that, or whoever's behind here saying that, or in the conversation, whatever I just said, asserts must prove. When they say that, it's catchy, it's pithy, it helps, and it's true, because we didn't come up with it, right? God himself came up with it.
Usually heard as well, it didn't say we can't.
Right. Yeah.
Here's the conversation.
Oh, last point. It says that all Israel returned. Okay? I guess I read a little bit there. All 12 tribes. You've heard of the 10 lost tribes, or the lost 10 tribes, or whatever you want to hear of. Logically, so Persia, this is actually which was so here was Syria, where here was Syria, and then Assyria, and then Babylon, and now it's all of Persia. And the king, remember that's where they were deported to. The Israelites were deported to Assyria, and then all the way down here to Babylon, and some over there to Memphis and Alexandria and other places like that. So the great king says to all his people, remember the proclamation went out in chapter 1 to all his nation. He says, all y'all go home. Okay? All y'all go home. And so the idea is, well, yeah, who would that include? That would include the 10 lost tribes. The 10 not lost tribes, right? Right? They weren't lost, right? And Jeremiah 50, I had you turn there. Jeremiah 50 says, verse 1, concerning Babylon. Verse 3 says, a nation has come up against her out of the north. This is, everybody gets this, it's talking about Cyrus. Yeah, it's talking about Cyrus. Verse 4, so Jeremiah 51, concerning Babylon. Verse 3, a nation has come up against her. Verse 4, in those days, at that time, declares the Lord, the sons of Israel will come, both they and the sons of Judah as well. And they will go along weeping as they go. So they're going back. Then in the same chapter, verses 6 through 24, does the same thing all over again. Verse 8, wander away from the midst of Babylon. Go forth from the land of the Chaldeans. Verse 9, for I am going to arouse and bring up against Babylon a horde of great nations from the land of the north. Okay, so it's Babylon being attacked by Persia. Verse 17, Israel's a scattered flock. Notice it says Israel. Now it will define Israel. The first who devoured him was the king of Assyria. The last one who has broken his bones is Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar never attacked Israel. Nebuchadnezzar only attacks Judah. But here it calls Judah Israel. In fact, he'll go on to say, verse 19, I will bring back Israel. Verse 20, in those days at that time the Lord, search will be made for the iniquity of Israel, but there will be none, and for the sins of Judah, but they will not be found. So God says, look, when all this happens, I'm bringing back everybody. So to think that there were 10 lost tribes, now I realize that not all of the 10 lost, not every single person, I understand that. But as far as the tribes, there were never 10 lost tribes. God knows where they were, and it says in Ezra, for example, all Israel was in their cities, right? Okay. That's chapter 2. Any comments or questions from chapter 1 and 2 before we get into 3?
A lot of mundane detail for something that was supposedly written in modern times to fool the entire world. On its own, it doesn't make the argument, but
yep.
Nobody sits here and writes these names and these numbers. Particularly missing the fact that evidence might turn up later that would prove them. It doesn't make any sense.
The throwaway details turned out to be not so throwaway after all, right? Having said that, I will say this. I can't remember his name right now. I think his name was Isaiah. Who was the guy that came here, but not to Washington? Did you ever read any of his writings?
Yes.
You said, I get your point. You said nobody would write like this. He did. And it was about himself. He believed he was a prophet from God. This guy was in here. What is his name? You think his name? Yeah. So he's in among us. He came over to our house, had Bible discussion, and he visited us once or twice. And you can read his writings on the internet, claims to be a prophet of God, and has had specific revelation, and has written copious pages of quote-unquote revelation. So you think, who would write that? There are some people that do, because they're a little wacky. Okay. The rebuilding begins. Oh, you're still thinking. Don't get lost on it. Chapter 3, verse 1. In the 7th month came the sons of Israel were in the cities. The people gathered together as one man to Jerusalem. Then Jeshua, the son of Jozadak, and his brothers, the priests, and Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, and his brothers arose and built an altar of God, of the God of Israel, to offer burnt offerings on it. And Jeshua and Zerubbabel took their respective fire pans, and after putting fire in them, placed incense on them, and offered strange fire before the Lord, which he had not commanded them. No, it doesn't say that. But what if they had? Yeah, what did you just do? Like, exasperation? That would have been really dumb. Why wouldn't they do that? God didn't tell them to, and they have an example of it. How many years beforehand? Hundreds and hundreds of years beforehand. And so you look at that and you say that's a no-brainer. Obviously, they wouldn't be dumb enough to do that. Really. Then why do we have all the chaos we have? We. Modern. God never told them, I think you said, God never, maybe one of you, God never told us to have musical instruments. He never told us to. Then why do we? The same things apply. The one who can see that it would have been silly for Jeshua and Zerubbabel to do it should be able to be consistent enough to see that it should be silly for them or anybody nowadays to do.
Isaac.
Yeah, Isaac. Okay. Do I have to say the whole point again? Yeah. Okay. So in chapter 3, verse 1, I will reread it, but I had planned to do that. That's funny. Then the 7th month came, and the sons of Israel were in the cities. What we're going to talk about now is a plan applicable in any almighty assignment. Yeah. So, the people gathered together. The assignment is build the temple, right? Get back there, build the temple. That's what Cyrus actually sent them back to do. God sent them through Cyrus. So they gathered together. There's the assembling. As one man, there's the unity. Then Joshua, the son of Jozadak, and the brothers of the priests, and Zerubbabel, the sons of Shealtiel, and his brothers, arose. If nobody ever gets up, the work is never going to get done, right? They built an offering, an altar of God, of the God of Israel, to offer burnt offerings on it, as it is written in the law of Moses. At least 5 times you'll see in this section, according to the way God said so. Okay, so that's really being emphasized in here. So they set up the altar on its foundation, and they were terrified because of the peoples of the lands. Acknowledge your foes and your fear. Don't ever, oh no, I'm not afraid of that. We have no obstacles in our war. That's the person burying their head in the sand. No, you can't do that. It says that, and they offered burnt offerings on it to the Lord, burnt offerings morning and evening. So appeal through faithful obedience and prayer to God for his blessing. That's what they're doing. Hey, God, we need your help. One way we appeal to you is in prayer, and another way is in just doing what you tell us to do. They celebrated the Feast of Booths. You notice they're all A's up there so far. Yeah, so they celebrated the Feast of Booths as it is written. Offered this fixed number of burnt offerings according to the ordinance, as each day required. And afterward, there were continual burnt offering, also for new moons and for all the fixed festivals of the Lord that were consecrated, and from everyone who offered a free will offering to the Lord. From the first day of the 7th month, they began to offer burnt offerings to the Lord, but the foundation of the temple of the Lord had not been laid. So they're getting going, they're doing all right, but they still have more work to do. So we're going to keep on going. Remember, this is Revelation. This is Revelation chapter 2 and chapter 3. Look, some of you churches are doing these good things, but I still want you to do more. You guys are still doing this, and your works as of late are greater than they were when they began, but I still want you to do more. Here we go. You've done the altar, great, but keep on going. In the 2nd year of their coming to the house of God at Jerusalem, in the 2nd month, Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, and Joshua, the son of Jehozadak, and the rest of their brothers and the priests and the Levites and all who came from the captivity of Jerusalem began to work, and appointed the Levites from 20 years and older to oversee the work in the house of the Lord. Then Jeshua with his sons and his brothers stood united with Kadmiel and his sons, and the sons of Judah and the sons of Henadad, their sons and the brothers of the Levites, to oversee the workmen of the temple of God. This one's for free real quick. That time, in verse 9, Kadmiel. I did a quick search of his name. I don't know if he is the same one throughout. I have a problem with that chronologically. But it doesn't matter. This word, this name, every time it comes up in the Bible, somebody's doing the work of God. I don't know who he is or who they are, but I can't wait to meet them. These workers of God. Okay, that was free. Then, verse 10. When the builders had laid the foundation of the temple of the Lord, the priests stood in their apparel with trumpets, and the Levites, the sons of Asaph, with these cymbals to praise the Lord according to the directions of King David of Israel. They sang